Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The CDL returns this Friday, but the bane of our existence, Fortress Control, seems to be sticking around for potentially the rest of the season. The pro teams either hate Expo, including OpTic, which is quite surprising for reasons we'll get into, or straight up refuse to practice any other teams on it, and therefore nobody can play it, and therefore it's probably not going to come into the rule set. Fortress is here to stay. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, quickly on the Challengers Cups going on around the different regions yesterday. Parasite made some progress, ended up going down though to a team that didn't win the tournament, but also to note the Gravity's team was signed by Orbit. If you guys have been around a while, you'll know that Orbit was like an OG COD organization. I remember maybe they were last around, possibly more recently, but I remember especially at the start of Infinite Warfare, they had a pretty competitive European team, but for some time I think they were even over in the APAC region. Now they've signed Gravity and Co and Lau, formerly Jimbo, from the North American side. It's pretty cool stuff to see OG organizations returning, probably under new ownership or something, in some form or another. In the European side, it was Harry and Co. This team is insanely stacked, honestly. The Awobabobs now, with Harry, Vortex, aBeZy, and Dender. This team is outrageous, and they're going to win a lot. I believe they've won, aBeZy now has won 3 in a row in this European side. So he might be one of the next up players in the league. We saw it right at the start of the season. Incredibly good team. Few roster changes in Europe lately, but this guy's been winning everything lately, and yeah, I want to see him get a chance in some fashion going forward. In the North American side, it was Cruz and Co with Ghosty, Dak, and Luna that took the W. I don't even believe these guys qualified for the Elite, but they still managed to win the Grand Finals here. Pretty cool for Cruz, but also Dak, right? This was the player that was briefly considered, I thought, by Thieves when they were looking for a potential substitute to come into their roster. They eventually got Capsidel, and then when Florida were looking for their move and they got Cap, I think they might have been looking at Dak as well. So another one of these players that's on the cusp of getting called up to the CDL if the time is potentially there for him. One of the only couple of roster changes we really saw, though, was the Vegas Legion. I thought it was pretty interesting to look at Standy statistics over the last couple of years. It does feel in a way that, I mean, Cold War, for example, Dead Silence was a factor in that game, and Standy does seem to have a good time in general with Dead Silences around. So hopefully, you know, either Temp can get off the Deaddy or whatever and put on the trophy, and therefore Standy can get on the Dead Silence here for Modern Warfare 2, because I think that will help him a fair bit. His search has been good the first couple of years he played. This year, not so much, but his respawn's better overall. So kind of Cold War, he had the best of all the worlds. Good in hardpoint, search, and control. Last year, he was okay in search, but kind of lackluster in the other modes. And this year, he's been good apart from the search and destroy. So if you can put that all together again, Vegas are going to have a decent chance. I mean, look, his KD overall is so much better on average than we've seen it from some of the other SMGs in the respawn game modes, at least, on that Vegas team. But in fairness, TJ was better during the Major 3 cycle than he was earlier on in the season, and you can understand why he stayed on the team as a result. Let's talk Fortress Control then. So a big talking point of the last couple of weeks has been, is Fortress going to go? This new map Expo arrived into the game, and you know, many teams and players were deeply frustrated about Fortress Control for many months, and finally a new map comes along that may be viable, and I think probably is viable, but the pros seem to disagree. Now look, Expo fundamentally is a map made by Infinity Ward. That means it's not going to be particularly good. Okay, Infinity Ward have occasionally made good maps, but you know, one additional one they bring in, yes, it looks good, yes, part of the map plays kind of well. I think for pubs it actually makes a lot of sense, but for a 4v4 competitive setting it's far from optimal, but that doesn't mean that it's not viable, especially compared to Fortress Control, which is arguably, and I think is definitely in the conversation of the worst map mode combination in competitive Call of Duty history. I'm not sure it's quite the worst we've ever seen, but many have said that it's absolutely terrible, and Hitrider's made the point. I think it's kind of interesting the fact that OpTic are saying what they are saying now, at least we'll see from Ghosty here in a second, despite the fact that Hitch has been a massive, you know, critic, right, of Fortress Control, and for understandable reasons, but it seems his own team want to keep it around, as we'll see in a second. He's wanted it gone, it seemed the players want it gone, the fans certainly want it gone, and we've been pushing the pros like, look, how about you guys try out Farm 18 control? And they said, you know, probably not going to work. Now they've tried at Expo, and there were rumours that Expo was going to be even pushed in for search and destroy. So therefore I thought, okay, if they're even considering it for search, surely it's a no-brainer for control, because Fortress is clearly terrible. Everybody knows it. Massively defensive favoured. I believe the win rate on offense on Fortress is something like 13 to 15%. Not particularly good. Now, I will say that when I watch Fortress, at least it's over quite quickly. And in fairness, you do often, the better team usually does end up winning the map, I think, a lot of the time. Just because the better teams will find a way to get ticks on offense, and they might end up securing themselves defense round 5. So I usually think that in terms of the better team winning, I don't think Fortress is actually too bad. But to play and to watch, it's not particularly good at all, and you can understand why potential changes were being considered. And Expo, of course, seemed like a reasonable candidate to come in. So it's been in ranked for the last few days, and the pros have got the chance to play it. Now, it seems that some of the players have logged into ranked play, given it a go for a few hours, and I feel like some of what's going on here is kind of, there's not exactly a confirmation bias, I believe, in play, because the pros play it expecting it to not be very good potentially, and then they play it for a couple of times in ranked to think, yeah, this map is terrible, like, let's call it off. Now, I know that some, obviously, I'm sure you guys have experienced it in ranked play so far, and there's been some mixed feedback. Some say it's good, some say it's terrible. I don't think it's particularly good from what I've seen. Is it better than Fortress though? I'd probably say yes, but the pros seem to have this opinion that, oh yeah, well, you know, we've played Fortress for some time, so let's just keep the status quo. Even though I'm pretty confident if Expo was in the game from launch, it would be played for Control, but because it's not in the game from launch, they've got Fortress for some time. Some teams maybe don't like Fortress, but they're better at Fortress than average, and therefore they don't want to risk changing up the status quo, which is where the issues start to arise here. And I think some pros have played it a couple of times and thought, yeah, like, I'm just going to believe this is terrible, so we don't have to change the map pool, which maybe isn't good, but maybe favors their team specifically. So Ghosty gave his thoughts on the map as well, and I thought Ghosty's thoughts were surprising in a way, because OpTic, we know their record on Fortress Control is terrible. If there was one team in the league that would probably benefit most from Fortress going and having another map where it's kind of 50-50 if they're good or bad on, it's probably OpTic Texas. But either Ghosty doesn't grasp how the politics of gentlemen's agreements and these decisions work, or he's just straight up being honest here that this map is terrible in his opinion. He doesn't want Expo coming in, and he says outright, OpTic Texas will be voting for Fortress Control to stay and Expo to not be coming in. I guess there's a vote coming in the coming days. They've decided no, and even I'll share this from Octane, which I thought was incredible, that many teams, LA Thieves have been asking many teams to, like, look, scrim us on Expo Control, let's give it a go in an actual competitive setting to see if it's good, because, like, the pros can play it in ranked to get their opinion on, like, a game that really hasn't been developed right. No one really knows how to play Expo in ranked as of yet. It's a brand new map. What are the setups? What are the rotations? Like, what are the potential spawn traps? What are the potential spawns? Nobody really knows yet. Like, the pros need to play it on a pro team versus pro team basis to actually get a feeling for that. Los Angeles Thieves have tried. They've been asking teams to scrim them, and the teams just straight up refuse and say, no, we're not doing it, lads. We're sticking with Fortress.
This map is horrible, bro. This map is horrible. I'll just say it now. We are not OpTic Gaming. OpTic Texas will not be voting this to replace Fortress. I will say it here now.
And I'm not as like, we're not as big as OpTic, but like the Guerrillas will not be playing this.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna be honest. Fortress is but this is more. This is worse.
This is like.
I'd rather play Hydro. Like, you're literally anything else. I'd literally like pick any of the maps, and I'd rather play it than this one.
All right, how you liking the new map? We haven't played it because teams refuse to scrim it. Isn't that cool, guys? Isn't that cool? We've asked every single team that we have played for the last 4 days to play the map, and every single one of them has said no. How cool is that? Oh, bro, I love it. It's so lit. Chat always a tone. All right. Teams just don't want to scrim it. Isn't that a cool and interactive thing? I think so, personally. Me personally, I think it is.
So it feels like there's some closed-mindedness going on here by some of the pro players as to whether even bringing Expo in the first place. At least Ghosty and OpTic might have played it in ranked play, but Octane's like, everyone they ask, we don't really know the specific teams he's discussing here, but basically anyone they ask apparently is like just refusing to scrim them, basically saying, yeah, we're not playing Expo, like it's not going to happen type thing, even though surely it's in the best interest of everyone involved. So it reminds me of when Parasite said a few weeks ago, like the Pussy League or whatever, just calling all the pro players. Like, it feels like there's a lot of that going on, right? And at the end of the day, Fortress, like, surely it can't be worse than this. I saw this clip on Reddit yesterday from this guy. He was absolutely frying these kids, by the way. But look at the spawns here. So he absolutely smokes this guy. And, I mean, this is Fortress Control in a nutshell. Lays down on these stairs. It's just an outrageously terrible map for Control. Look at where they spawn. He kills 2, kills 3 right here. And then he goes backwards a second. And then look at the spawn he gets. He turns right again, and some guy just spawns right in front of him, and he gets the kill. It's like, wait, hang on a second. He gets a nice little 5 earpiece before going down. But that's Fortress Control, ladies and gentlemen, and that's not the only thing that's bad about this map. But yet the pros seem to think, oh yeah, Expo can't be any better than that, even though I'm sure that it probably is. But anyway, the thing that surprised me about Ghosty's comments specifically was the Fortress Control record of OpTic Texas. They are terrible at this map. They're pretty good at Hotel. This season, their control record is abysmal compared to where they need it to be. Their hardpoint record is one of the best in the league. Their search and destroy is passable. This, of course, is with all the iterations of their roster, but their control across all their iterations has not been good. Even here at Major 3, it was pretty bad. They did better on Sunday and the final couple of days of the tournament in control than earlier on in their entire season, but still 11 and 18, that puts them something like 10th in the league in control record, and it's still not been great at Major 3 either. Their Hotel, though, is respectable, 7 and 8. Their aLLeY needs to get better, but still it's not too bad, 3 and 5 in the season. Their Fortress, though, that for some reason they played a lot for a good couple of weeks. They're 1 in 5 on. They would always go round 5 and lose because they would get offense. Like, obviously, we know that famous Shotzzy play that he made and all this stuff that happened at the time. But yeah, 1 in 5, they've won it once this season, Fortress. So if there's one team in the league that would probably benefit most from Fortress going and having a new map coming in that they could be 50-50 whether they're good or bad at it on, it's probably OpTic Texas. So I would expect them to be pushing hard for this, right? I know that that's just the politics of the way this works. And if OpTic do truly believe that Fortress is better than Expo, then fair enough, I guess, happy with them standing by their beliefs on what's better or worse. But, you know, it is in their best interest, I would say, to maybe get Fortress to be gone, but it doesn't seem like they're interested in doing so. Even though if OpTic were to come out and say, yeah, we think Expo is the way to go, and even practice against Thieves, like if OpTic were to say, hey, Thieves, like we'll scrim you on it, and maybe they actually play it and decide, actually, yeah, okay, having played this map a bit more, it's actually not too bad. I think this is like a massive thing in the competitive COD scene within the professional scene and the players, that there's always this status quo bias in place. You see this all the time, that even in previous years, when there's weapon metas that are a thing, and other weapons are maybe buffed or nerfed and get changed, but the pros will stick to what they use because, you know, even if they don't like the meta they currently have, they're used to it, and therefore they don't want to change because they don't want to risk themselves getting worse if a change was to occur. And it might now be a case of the teams just saying, you know what, let's just stick it out for the rest of this year with this current map set, even though there is potentially an alternative here for a couple of different game modes. Maybe we go into Major 4 qualifiers, and it's so bad, Fortress going to get it even worse. Let's say it gets down to like a 5% offensive win rate, so no one wins an offense the entire stage. Like, if it gets to that point, like, you know, do you think they would then decide for Major 5, like, all right, maybe we've got to take this seriously? But I thought they maybe would have come to that realization after Major 3, but seemingly they didn't. And now the game is fixed, and I believe the issues that were being had with the new patch update, which meant they couldn't play Expo, have been resolved. I think the issue is potentially that those issues went on so long that by the time it actually came around to them practicing Expo, as Octane is saying, that they're now so close to the start of the new stage that they're thinking, no, screw it, let's just stick it how it is, which I can kind of get in a way. So, I mean, maybe it's fundamentally it's kind of Infinity Ward's fault for making bad maps and having the game issues that they've had, but also the pros are at fault here, I believe, to a certain extent. The other thing is, right, that the game is kind of just broken. There's some spawns here going on aLLeY that don't really make too much sense, and even a Slasher says in the replies that from his understanding, some of these spawns are straight up randomized. There is without a doubt a random element to control spawns. I swear to God, the game just flips a coin. So the randomness is never optimal, of course, but even as these guys are saying, right, maybe Expo with a bit more kind of understanding of, if you play it through a few times between professional teams, like, I'm sure they might be able to figure out that it might be better than they realize it is. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Does it feel a bit like we're stuck from Fortress for the time being, or stuck with Fortress? Of course, it is the only map mode combination that Marky B won as a player this season when he beat Vegas on it somehow. It goes to show how bad Vegas are at control, and you'd have thought they'd have been interested in getting that map out as well, potentially, but seems like that is not the case. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.